Imagine waking up to discover that hackers, yes, actual DEF CON hackers, have been quietly protecting the water in your town, patching security flaws you didn't even know existed. Sounds traumatic? It's actually happening, and it's part of a much bigger story that most people still haven't caught on to. But here's where things get interesting. These good guy hackers aren't just doing this as a quirky experiment. They're fighting back against relentless cyber threats from international adversaries and trying to stop the next big disaster before it starts. It all began when a determined group of DEF CON volunteers, known for their world-famous Hacker Conference, decided to channel their skills towards safeguarding America's most overlooked infrastructure, the water supply. The mission? Offer free, expert cybersecurity help to water facilities that could never afford it on their own. This grassroots initiative, called the Franklin Project, named for Benjamin Franklin and his history of community service, started small but is now poised to explode in scale. The project had humble but urgent beginnings at last year's DEF CON, where an impressive 350 people stepped up to support the effort. The response was so overwhelming that organizers had to pause sign-up. There simply weren't enough hands on deck to welcome everyone. Jake Braun, DEF CON Franklin's co-founder and a former White House official, described the rush of volunteers as exhilarating but daunting. We had so much interest, we had to shut down sign-ups. I didn't have enough people to process everyone. In its first 9 months, Franklin's volunteers deployed to 5 water systems spanning Indiana, Oregon, Utah, and Vermont. Their work covered the basics many facilities struggle with, swapping out factory default passwords, enforcing multi-factor authentication, building accurate asset inventories, and running thorough network assessments. They even mapped out complex operational technology, OT, the behind-the-scenes tech often overlooked by small IT teams. But this is the part most people miss. Even tiny water systems in rural America are just as likely to be targeted by foreign hackers. Think China or Iran, as larger utilities in cities like Washington, D.C. Why? Because these small utilities often supply water to critical sites, military bases, hospitals, and more. At first, staff at these facilities didn't believe they could be targets. Why would they care about us? Was a common refrain. But after the discovery that Beijing's Volt Typhoon Group had breached hundreds of utilities, it became clear. Size doesn't matter to sophisticated threat actors. Initially, Franklin's vision was modest. Test the model with a few utilities, learn lessons, and then hopefully expand. But as attacks escalated and funding for federal programs like MS-ISAC and the EPA dwindled, the urgency grew. Braun sums it up. We don't have the luxury of slow, natural growth. There are 50,000 water utilities in the U.S., and the threats are only increasing. So what's their solution? Radical, rapid scaling. The Franklin Project has teamed up with organizations like the National Rural Water Association, Aspen Digital, and several cybersecurity leaders determined to provide protections for thousands more water systems without charging a dime. How? Backers like Craig Newmark Philanthropies and vendors such as Dragos, which offers free OT security software for smaller utilities, make it possible. But here's where it gets controversial. Is relying on a volunteer cyber militia really the best answer to defending critical national infrastructure? And what happens when the donated tech runs out or needs upgrades? Braun insists they're working only with genuinely free, sustainable tools, not the kind that lure users in and later slap them with fees. But this approach is not without critics. The volunteers' impact is already measurable. For example, one water utility manager, after recent cyber hygiene training, spotted a phishing link in his inbox and did what many wouldn't. He didn't click it. He called his cybersecurity contact for support, potentially averting an incident. Still, Most U.S. water utilities operate on razor-thin budgets. In many cases, the only IT expert on staff is also the person running the pumps. Raising rates to pay for cybersecurity is often politically impossible. So for now, it's up to these volunteers or no one at all. What do you think? Should the security of our water systems depend on unpaid hackers and donated software? Or is it time for a more systematic, federally funded approach? And is there a risk that this patchwork volunteer effort could actually introduce new vulnerabilities? Sound off in the comments. Do you agree with the Franklin Project's approach, or do you think critical infrastructure needs something more robust? Let's hear your perspective.